I didn't come from a family where we create content, eh? I came from a normal family. What I will become is not defined by where I come from, but it is defined by he who holds my future. Where I come from doesn't necessarily have to be the thing that I can run to every time. That background, that family where we come from does not necessarily define what we will become in the future. The calling and selection of our highest being is our true identity. Now, at some point, allow yourself to break through and understand that there is a purpose that is set ahead for you. Admit to being injured, but not trapped. Your values should be based on God. What does God want you to do? Then define the values. Actions that we take to hear and really walk in alignment with the purpose that God has called us for, that will really define who we will be in the future. You come from a bad family, or you think you come from a limited background, but there's something that I think we have all been created to do. And once you discover that, I think you live to the highest of standards. Did you know that people tend to attribute most of the bad things that happen in their lives to their native family, or the family of their family of origin? But did you also know that there are people who were able to break free from that kind of a chain and live a different life? So today in this podcast episode, it's a beautiful Sunday while recording this episode, and I just had a reflection recently throughout the week about what it means to have our personal identity. Now, I know I talked about identity, who are you, in the previous, I think, episode, cannot remember, was it episode 8, I think? 8 or 9? 8, probably, 8 or 9. But yeah, today I talked about identity with the global icon. But today I just want to, as I was reflecting, I was thinking, why do we tend to define life from the basis of our families? Like, not what if you were able to today define your life according to the standard set for you by God, instead of, according to, oh, my family has never achieved that. We have this tendency that even in a family, when a child dreams of something big, sometimes parents can become a bit negative. Should we say a bit negative, or a lot, very, very negative, and say, who in your family do you know has achieved that? Or have you ever seen anybody here stop dreaming about that, or stop talking about that? And so we tend to cut dreams short. We tend to cut our ambitions just because our families were not able to at least have that success. And this is a personal reflection. So this message is going to be for future Emmanuel. It's going to be for future Emmanuel. And I hope when you listen to this episode in the future, you'll remember that at some point, the family of our origin does not define us, but we are defined by God, who sets the standard. So the definition of our life is not given to us by our native family, and the calling and selection of our highest being is our true identity. This is just a phrase that I wrote while thinking about this topic throughout the week. The highest, the selection or the calling of our highest being is the true identity. Like, if God has called us to a certain level, that is your true identity. It's not about where I came from. And this episode is just not a raw conversation with myself, but it is a reflection of 5 characters from the Bible that I know these people came from difficult family backgrounds, but they were able to persevere, they were able to do wonders, and they were blessed abundantly. And so this episode is packed with practical people that I will show where they come from, and then I will show the change that they had to make, or the choice that they had to make, and who they became afterwards. But also I will share my thoughts of, now, if you feel like you're trapped in that family thinking, what should you do? What can you do right now? And so stay to the end of the podcast episode. Stay to the end. I hope you enjoy. And this is the SelfSeed podcast, brought to you by sponsored by OC Cross Border Services. And this episode, we are in this series of the Constructive Journal, and this episode is another reflection on the identity. Who am I? What is my purpose? Like, why am I created? And does my family get to where I come from? Does it get to influence who I am or how people see me or who I become? So let's get into it. Now, these 5 characters in the Bible have impressed me so much. They have impressed me so much with how they were able to transition, like from, moving away from their families, the transition they had to go through, and the outcome or the impact that they made. And the first person I want us to talk is from actually Genesis, and it's Abraham. Abraham, the father of many nations. Now, we know that, I know that probably you don't know, but if you're listening to this episode, I want you to know that. So Abraham came from a ungodly family, in essence. Let's put it like that. He came from an ungodly family. But it is from this family, during his time in his family, in his 70s, I think, that's when God called him and said, Abraham, you have to leave. He said specific words like, you have to leave your household. You have to leave your family. You have to leave your traditions. Leave all of that, and I will take you to the land that I will show you, to the place that I will show you. Now, context. Now, this story, I don't know what's your belief, but when I'm narrating this story, I'm not trying to imply anything here, yeah? But Abraham was called from an ungodly family, right? And he was called by God from this family. And he was told to abandon all of that. The customs, what you're used to, right? Leave your father's household, leave everything that he has, and leave all that life that you were used to, the normal. Leave the normal and go to the land that I have I have prepared for you. And Abraham actually just did it, He just did it. Now, his native family was not godly, right? His father lived in the Ur of the Chaldeans. And his father, in that land of the Chaldeans, is it Chaldeans or Chaldeans? But anyways, it's not important in this context, where in that land there was idolatry was like top notch, right? And he was told now to move away from that, leave his place, leave his family, and leave his father's house. Leave his place, his family, his father's house, meaning he has to now transition. For him to really reach to the promise that God will set for him ahead, because God will then give him a promise, right? For him to reach that promise ahead, he has to live where he is. He's being called to live where he is. Now, context here is that the family already, if he was going to be defined by the family that he came from, it was already an ungodly family. And so we could have said in this context, maybe he's doomed to his family's path. But then he's called, he's snatched along the way. Now, he did so. He respected, and he went away in confidence without even knowing where he's supposed to go. And by this confidence, with this confidence, he was not bound by his family or his traditions or his worry, but only chose to hear what was God's speaking, what was God speaking, and what was God's purpose for his life. And so, leave your father's household, and he did. Right? And we know now from that story, Abraham was blessed to become, he was told that actually you will have many children as the stars in the sky, as the sands on the seashore, which means you cannot count. But at that time, Abraham was already old when he's given this promise. And he's he knows, even Sarah, when she was told, Abraham was I think 100, if not 100, 100, and Sarah was 90 or 80, I think. And Sarah laughed, in disbelief. With the regular mind, it's man, you're telling me I'll have kids as the sand of the seashore, and I'm already at the old age, and how do you expect I will do that again? I don't even have one. And it is within that after that promise, I know Abraham did some, the thinking of oh, God said this, and so maybe I should have the kid, and he got Ishmael. That's another story. But still, it is from this Isaac's birth, and that now we know that almost all he has now, we could say he has as many children as the stars in the sky, uncountable, the father of all nations, isn't it? From him became many nations came along. And we see he was blessed with cattle, he was blessed with everything. But it was from the point of, leave your family, leave your father's household, and leave everything that you cherished. And well, eventually his family did not determine his fate, because his fate and his family's fate were different. He became the father of many nations. Now, this is character number one. Character number two is and I would like to speak about this because enthusiastically, is it? Because he's again a descendant of Abraham. He's like the third descendant, because Abraham, Isaac, and then Jacob. Now Jacob's son, like he had 12 sons. Now the 11th one, Joseph, is the character that I thought about. Now Joseph was born, should you say, with privilege or with access to God and all that, but he was born in an environment already that he was among of the children of 4 wives, right? Different wives. But he was already born in that environment where there are many wives, so there are many children, and it means even priorities or competing for interests. It might be because already there are many wives involved and the father. But now the strangest thing is that the father loved Joseph, who was like, he and his brother belonged to one wife. He loved these two people, this one especially. And that love itself steered hatred among his brothers. And it led to his brothers, inciting to, kill him when he went to, his father sent him to look at his brothers, and they planned to kill him. And, but one of his brothers, I think it was, is it R? His name starts with R, isn't it? Why do I forget that name? Reuben. Yeah, Reuben. Reuben, he said, why? It's not good for us to kill our brother. Instead, we can just, put him, like maybe throw him there and go and tell our father that maybe he was, raptured by something, eaten by a wild animal and all that. And he was, they decided they were going to put him on a hole. But Reuben had a plan, like to come and rescue him. But it didn't happen that way. And eventually Joseph gets sold to slavery in Egypt, and he lands in the house of Potiphar. And Potiphar, the wife kind of likes Joseph. He was good looking, and you're like, my brother, come and, yeah. And when Joseph said no, Potiphar's wife, created this kind of a lie also, and Joseph was thrown into jail. And now, look, Joseph, he didn't do anything wrong to his brothers, but his brothers hated him, and jealousy arose. And Joseph was able, as a normal human being, even me, I would have been bitter, my brother. My brother does that to me, and and eventually, he rises to the ranks of, I think, Prime Minister of Egypt, second to Pharaoh, and he rescues the land from, hunger and all that. And during the 7 years, he had a dream of 7 years of plentiful food, and then 7 years of hunger, which will be devastating across the world. And now after the 7 years, when the 7 years of hunger came, remember that Joseph was betrayed by not betrayed, but killed, in essence, killed by his brothers, right? Out of jealousy. And he lands into Egypt. He becomes, this high-ranking official, and he rescues the land from hunger. Now, those brothers, they are sent to Egypt to get food by their father. And Joseph recognizes them, and he cries, multiple times he cries, almost 4 times he cries just by seeing his brothers. And eventually he makes this, plan to, bring them back, and he reveals himself to them, and he cries bitterly, he cries bitterly. He tries to toughen up in the beginning, but then he cries eventually. And now it makes you think, Joseph, who was betrayed by his brothers, he's now in possession of power. A place of power where you could literally, by that bitterness within me, that resentment within me, I could have done something to them. He could have paid back. But he says, I forgive you. It was not you, but God had a plan for me. Now, by common sense, it's just like, bro, would you have forgiven your brothers and just say, but I think it's because of that thing that Ray I'm trying to incite, that once you know the purpose that God has set for you, it kind of determines your value, it kind of determines your action, and it kind of determines even the words that you say, and it controls like situations. And so Joseph was able to deal with the situation and all that, and he was able to reunite with his family. But it was from that point of like, I come from a terrible family of brothers. They don't like me. Apart from Benjamin, who was his younger brother, the last one. They were from the same mother. But this family does not like me. These brothers never liked me. But still, he was able to forgive. He was able to, prevail in everything he did. He even saved the nation of Israel at that time, by bringing them into Egypt, and they enjoyed everything and all that. And he was able to do that because of the knowledge of what God had set for him, what God had called him to do. And so he was not moved, he was not shaken by what his family did to him. And so that's another very interesting story that I think it kind of gives us a reflection of what it means to come from a bad family, but yet being able to break the boundaries, break the limits, break the curses, break the limitations that were always thought to be the right thing in the families. Now, the third person that comes to my head, the third person is we have already Abraham and Joseph. Now, after the Israelites stay in Egypt for a long time, like 400 years or something, then it comes like there was a prophecy God had given, like they will stay there for they will stay there for many years, and then later on he will take them out with a mighty hand. Yeah. Now, it is at this juncture of them being supposed, after Joseph had died many years ago, and Egyptians, I think they had forgotten who Joseph was, and now the new pharaoh kind of was torturing the Egyptians. And it is at this point that a new character is born, Moses. Now Moses, it's just interesting how these characters are born. Now Moses was born during the time of male children being killed in Egypt, male children of the Israelites being killed, because they were they were populating the country. And now Moses is from an Israel family bloodline, but eventually his mother put him on his sister put him on a thingy by the river Nile, I think, Nile, whatever, and goes on to this kind of a small, should we call it, what is it, like a basin or whatever this thing is, and it floats, and eventually Pharaoh's daughter gets a glimpse of Moses, and he adopts Moses as his son. Now, at this point, we call Moses the Prince of Egypt, isn't it? But he's from an Israel background. But, faced with these both arrays, like I'm from an Israel background, but I live with the king, and I deserve to be a prince. It means I deserve to be a prince of Egypt. He denounces that after he grows up. Like, there's something happens, and he decides to denounce. Now, he doesn't want to be called the prince, like the son of a daughter of a king of Egypt, of Pharaoh, but instead he wants to be with other Israelites. He wants to help his other Israelites, like from being from redemption. Now I'm telling you, his background already has that part where he could have just relaxed and stayed he could have stayed with Pharaoh's daughter in the palace, and just forget about the pains of other Israelites. But he decided that I don't want to belong to that. I don't want to be bound by that. I want to really help the people. And he goes on, and God has an encounter with him, and God calls him to the rescue of the Israelites and all that. The story is long, and I do not want to tire you by you listening to that story. But eventually he becomes a character that is prominent as well in the storybook of the Bible, right? In my knowledge, he becomes a prominent player into the redemption of the Israelites. But not just a prominent player in the redemption of the Israelites, but a prominent player in the Christian faith, right? And now, remember that Moses came from this not so straight background, right? It had crooked path, and things were not as merry Mary. He could have died, he could have what, but he did not let those things define him, because eventually God showed him the purpose, like the higher calling of like, what are you supposed to do? And that's what he ran with. Now imagine that's one good character, that you come from a bad family, or you think you come from a limited background, but there's something that I think we have all been created to do. And once you discover that, I think you live to the highest of standards. You live with faith, you live with courage, you live with strength, hope, and all that. And you just face life, like even when challenges arise, I think you just keep going, because you understand what has been placed ahead of you, the task that has been placed ahead of you. And Moses now eventually leads the Israelites out of Egypt, and they wandered the desert for 40 years. He dies along there, but now remember, he's a character that, like, he shaped the whole future of the Israelites from there, in that wandering, in that changes, because he's the one who had encounters with God. He talked, he wrote the covenants, that the commandments, and he brought them to the people. And today, all Christians in the world, we respect, we value these 10 commandments, because they foresaw, or they reshaped the way that we live. Because God wants a relationship with him. He wants us to love one another and to love him with all our hearts. And it is Moses who was just this link between two things. It was just that link that happened between God and us. It's kind of a foreseeing of what Christ plays, and all that. And the next character I want to talk about is Ruth. Ruth now this character, why did I choose her to be number 4 in my list, in my thinking, is because Ruth was also an interesting woman. Like, Ruth was a Moabite woman, and she was married to an Israelite family, and she was married to a family where the mother was called Naomi, or however you pronounce. Cool with that. I'm cool with that. Now, Naomi had a husband, and she had 2 sons. Now, eventually, unfortunately, the husband died, and the 2 sons died. Now, remember, Ruth was already married to one of the sons, and they died, both of them, and their father. And so Naomi, hey, she remained a widow, right? The mother remained a widow, and she also, I don't know how they call someone who loses her kids. My English there. But yeah, she lost both things. And so she told, Ruth, like, you can go back to your land, regain everything, and just, get married again. For you are young, but for me, I cannot get married because I'm already old, and, I've lost my husband and my 2 kids. But for you are young, and I think you can still go and have a life. But Ruth, who came from a Moabite background, who came from also that part of experiencing loss, decided to stay with Naomi to the end. Like she said, my people will be your people, my house will be your house, my food will be your food, I think, if I added that third part though. But yeah, she decided to stay with Naomi in all circumstances. It's like, I do not know why God has done this, but I will stay with you because I believe that the God that you serve, the God that you believe in, can do amazing things, can do great things. And so Ruth, with that faith and with that, understanding that where I come from doesn't necessarily have to be the thing that I can run to every time, but where I am right now and where I'm supposed to go is all held by the Creator, the maker of all things. So it means he defines what I must do. He defines where I must go next. And eventually, the story just unfolds beautifully. She stays with Naomi. And after staying with Naomi, she meets this guy called Boaz, who is like rich and is like, I think he's like Naomi's, is it cousin or uncle, something like that. And, eventually they get married, and Ruth becomes the root of, the King David's line. Like Boaz, him marrying Ruth, this is where David's line generates. And from David's line, that's where we know Jesus comes to, eventually come out, and who's like there. So you see, like, God had a purpose for Ruth from the beginning. It's not about the land that you came from. No need to run there. No need to run back there. But it is like I have a purpose for you. And what is the purpose I have for you? Just, be patient, or stay with this woman, or just walk with this woman, and I will reveal something. So, like, we could all come from the toughest of backgrounds, or we could all come from the merriest of backgrounds. But that background, that family where we come from, does not necessarily define what we will become in the future. So you might come from the merriest of families, but not necessarily that you'll end up the merriest of, also with the merriest of families, but it's more about what does God like, what does God intend for me to do in this life? What is the mission that is placed inside me? What's the vision that is placed inside me? And that thing that allows you to wake up every morning joyously, if it is impacting life, if it is changing life, that keeps pushing you. Maybe that's the thing that God really wants you to do. Your family, maybe they never change anybody's life, yeah? But maybe God is calling you to change someone's life. And the last character now I want to talk about is from Ruth, from Ruth and Boaz's lineage, where now Jesse, the father of David, comes from, and Jesse, is born, and Jesse gives birth. Jesse gives birth a guy. But anyways, Jesse, the offspring of Jesse is, one of them is David. And David is like the last born in his family. He has like big brothers who are like tough for war. They are good to be kings and all that. And now the person that I want to talk about, the fifth character, is David. Now look, David is seen as a, handsome boy, soft boy in the family, and maybe probably nobody intends thinks David might be a king. But Jesse, I think Jesse knew that when Samuel went to anoint a son in Jesse's household, he went and asked. I think God, he said, like, along the lines of like, God has anointed someone in this household to become the future king of Israel. And at that time, it was because Saul, did some wrong things, and God had revoked his kingship, not kinship, kingship, like his rule. And eventually God chose someone else, and nobody knew it was David. But I think Jesse had a clue, like Samuel was talking about about David, because now I want to talk about the character of David. David is from this family whereby he's like the forgotten son. Although he's like the one keeping the herds, he's the one doing this, doing that, but he's that forgotten son. Like, he's the last, and nobody really remembers David as much, and so he eventually just, that day when Samuel goes to anoint the sons, what Jesse, in the perception of Jesse, is like, if God wants a king, then he wants someone who is muscular, or is powerful, is heroic or something, has a heroic figure or character. And Samuel says something good, like interesting. He says God does not look at humane features, but rather he looks at the heart, like he knows deep in the heart. And so you see, David is from this background where his family is expecting that, okay, if maybe they do not so firmly, maybe they believe in God, but not so firmly, like they still believe in the physical capabilities, they believe in what they can do, in what they have and all that. But David is this person who is humble in heart, he's meek, he's that person who is a warrior, but not in the humane terms only, but even in the heart. Like, that's why I think along the line, Psalm says, we are told that David was the man who was after God's heart. Because now David, I'm not saying that David, and I'm not, like, the disclaimer that I want to put is not like all characters that I mentioned in this they had no flaws of themselves. Apart, today I'm just focusing on where they came from, but they also had flaws. But it is when they knew the purpose that they had, we are looking at how did they navigate, like redefining. They are not limited by the family of origin, they are not limited by their background, native families, but they redefined what it means to be a person, what it means to be David, what it means to be Moses, what it means to be a person chosen, a person who knows what is placed within them. And now David, eventually, he gets anointed. Surprisingly, everybody I think didn't expect, because everybody was looking at the characters that are humane. And David gets anointed. He becomes king of Israel, and he's wise in his level. And from David comes Solomon, who is the wisest king on earth and the richest guy on earth. And later on, it is from this line that Jesus is born. But see, David came from a background also that was challenging, but it did not refine, it did not define who he ought to be. When his family, because he writes somewhere, I think it's in Proverbs, I think his family abandoned him, but God took him in. So it means he was having this, pain just the same as Joseph had with his brothers. He had this pain inside him, like, my family couldn't even, recommend me, didn't even think about me. It was like, actually, the funny thing is, like, when Samuel had already finished the sons, that's when Jesse said, oh, there's that one last born, I think is out there. Just go and call him. Maybe it's that one. And, eventually he was the one. So you can resonate. Think for a moment. You are called as an option later that everybody has forgotten, and they are just like, oh, wait, oh, there's that guy, oh, there's Emmanuel. And imagine the resentment you have when your family does that to you. And so I think it is with these reflections that I understand it is not the families that we come from that define who we will become in the future, but it is the actions that we take to hear and really walk in alignment with the purpose that God has called us for that will really now really define who we will be in the future. And so these are the 5 characters. Now I have mentioned Abraham, Joseph, Moses, Ruth, and David. If you have time, try to look into them. These 5 characters I have noticed, because it's an area where I have read more about these characters, and I think there are people probably even in your community around you that have not allowed the limits of where they came from. You listen to these people who have breakthroughs in life, and they just tell you, I came from nothing. I came from a background, it's not a non-privileged, an unprivileged background, but I made it here. It is by grace. It is by understanding what God wanted for me. It is, some other people put it in other words, it's like grit, but it's not just grit. It's like God places something in your heart, and you know that no matter what, I will still push through, even when I get these kind of attacks, even when I get this kind of walls, roadblocks, I will still persevere, because I know, this is the thing. And sometimes maybe in worldly terms, you might not think, you may not relate to it being God, but it is the seed, the purpose that God has planted in you, that you keep waking up and saying, I'm going to build OC again. It's because I'm not giving up. It's because I'm going to do this podcasting thing again. I'm going to do this content creation. I'm going to do this business. I'm going to do this venture. I'm going to continue in this path. I'm going to continue researching, and especially in researching where you have, sometimes you feel like quitting, but you're just there because it's something maybe you know it is placed within you. It is what you've been called for. It is knowing that, oh, God has created me for a reason. And in whatever circumstance, the reason is not this what I will become is not defined by where I come from, but it is defined by He who holds my future. So if you're listening to this podcast until right now, I know that you probably find this stories interesting. So don't forget to at least subscribe then, before I continue, because most of you listen without even following or subscribing. So try to, follow us wherever that you're listening from, either Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever you're coming from. I didn't come from a family where we create content. I came from a normal family. But I think I realized what is placed within me, and that's why I'm creating this content and all that. And so, subscribe in it. Anyways, let's get back. Now, the thing is, I want to us to think for a moment. If we too have been, kind of limited or challenged by our family or harmed by our family of origin, what should we do then? So how can we take the steps today to now become better as we are heading to the end of this episode? I just want to, after mentioning these stories, I want you to, maybe you have already got the lessons of what you need to do, but here are five lessons, and I have noted them down, of what I think we should do to just try and become better. The first thing I just said is, admit to being injured but not trapped. Just as Joseph cried 4 times, in the pain, in that feeling of like, I am hurt, like my brothers could do this to me, my family, my own family could do this to me. And this is something I do frequently, and I'm doing it when things around me, my family, my friendships are not working, or what, I admit to, being hurt or being wrong at the same time. Like being hurt, being wrong, and just know that admitting to being injured, but do not accept to be trapped under the same umbrella, same thing, same container box. Don't think that, oh, because I am hurt, I will remain bitter. Because Joseph, at some point, he said a statement like, I know you guys did it, but do not blame yourselves. You did it, but God had a purpose for me. I know God had a purpose for me, and that's, the bigger purpose that he was talking about, the thing that God had called him to. So also admit to being injured or being feeling the pain. Admit the pain, but do not let yourself be. Do not allow yourself to stay there. Don't allow yourself to stay there. Allow yourself to break through. At some point, allow yourself to break through and understand that there is a purpose that is set ahead for you, just as Joseph. And the second thing is make a choice just like Moses. Now, Moses made a firm choice. He had the privilege of staying in the house, in the house of Pharaoh and enjoying the goodness of the land, and let his people suffer, or go and suffer with his people, but then leave all these riches. And so he made a firm choice to be with his people because he knew that his existence itself, maybe in the start he didn't know, even because even him meeting God was like strange. He was like, what? Who are you? Who am I going to tell the people? I'm not even okay. But he had flaws. That's why I'm saying he had flaws, but he made the choice. And we all make bad things. We all do wrong. We all sometimes deserve, we feel like we deserve the punishment, but also make a choice. Like, are you going to continue to stay in the place where you're hurt? Are you going to continue to embrace the pain, the challenge that you are facing? Or you realize that, are you going to embrace the comfort that you are